Welcome. Hey, this is Wise Up on Air. You have arrived just in time. My name is Damian Kaspauer. I'm Software Product Manager here at Audiokinetic. And today we're going to talk with Matt Piersall about Weird West. But before we get to that, we usually try to kick off these Wise Up on Airs with a little bit of Audiokinetic news. We got some cool community spotlight activity, things happening out there in the wide world of Wise developers. You can spell it with two W's if you want, but usually we just run them together into one 2W, W-W-O-N-E, one big word. So that's what we have in store for you today. Thanks for joining us in the chat. As always, feed those questions to us and we'll weave that into the conversation as we get going. The first thing I wanted to do is talk about some new pricing that we have that just started on April 1st. And for folks who have been tuned in across our socials, Audiokinetic at Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook, you might already know this, but let's uncover it for ourselves. If you head to the Get Started and Pricing at audiokinetic.com, you'll see that the biggest new thing is that we now have full platform access with unlimited sounds for indies. And this is a big deal if you're working on a project that has a less than $250,000 budget. Wise is yours. You can jump in and get started with creating dynamic and interactive audio using Wise in your project without restrictions. And as you move through your development process, if that changes, you can always have that conversation with us about licensing at some of our other tiers. And I think we'll be excited to talk more about the changes that we've brought to those over time. But in the short term, there has never been a better time as an indie to jump in and start authoring with Wise. So hopefully you have a chance to dig in deeper. And I'm really excited for the work that the licensing and biz dev team has been doing to bring that possibility to folks in the indie market. And on that note, game jams. This is something that we list here on our site under community events. And there's where we even put the Wise Up on Air event. But here on the game jams tab, you can see we got the Ludum Dare coming up. Right square in the middle of it, actually. Is anyone out there participating in that? A great opportunity to get some skills with some other folks out there in the industry. I love working with small teams to do interesting things with games because it oftentimes pushes you in different directions. And so if you've been looking for an opportunity to really foster some new ideas, game jams are a great way to do that. Another thing that's constantly ongoing is the Godot Wild Jam. And they're right in the middle of one right now. They spin it up every month. But we had a community integration with Godot that brought Wise into Godot as an option for authoring. So combining all of these things in our community with that ability to get your hands into a project, get started, and really be working with the full capacity of what Wise brings to the interactive pipeline. There's just never been a better time to get involved and do something cool with sound in the community. Speaking of that, I stumbled on a great reel from Andrew Escare, who is rewriting the score for the Wise Adventure game. And the Wise Adventure game, if you're not familiar, is our Unity and Wise sample project. You can get it through the Wise launcher. and have at it. It is a complete project built in Unity, with step-by-step tutorials that walk you through each of the systems. And it's all there for you to download. And what Andrew has done is replaced the music with his own compositions. I'm going to spin a little bit of that here for a second. And what I love is it's got this great annotation as we walk through his different compositional techniques. And this is just one of the ways that we see folks out there using Wwise, trying to educate people about the opportunities that are out there for sound and music. So thanks, Andrew, for bringing that to the community. The other cool thing was Juan Pablo Uribe, a senior sound designer here in Seattle working at Bungie, put this video up from Jenny Labonte, a co-worker of his, live streaming some footage from Destiny 2. And it's just really subtle ambient sound design work in Destiny 2 done by Evan Bueller that I'm going to spin here a little bit for you. Again, just some cool stuff going on out in the community.
Evan really killed it on these waterfalls. That's why he's the best.
So that's just a quick community spotlight that highlights some of the cool things that people are doing out there with interactive audio and Wwise. And again, back to that new licensing structure for indies, there's just never been a better time to get in and start getting your ears and hands on the potential that Wwise unlocks in your development pipeline. So inviting everyone there to jump in and share it with us. Let us know what you're doing. Drop in the Wwise hashtag if you're promoting it on Twitter. We try to keep an eye trained on that for the cool stuff that you're doing. As game players, as game developers, we're always listening, and it's always great to hear what you get up to out there with Wwise. So thanks for that. And that brings us to our special guest. This is an exciting one for me. This is a person I've known in the industry since maybe even before I was in game audio, found my way into this. And so without further ado, let me introduce Matt Piersall. Hey, Matt.
Hey, everybody. How you doing?
We're doing
great.
Hey, Damien. It's so good to see you.
Good. Very excited about the indie licensing pricing. I could have avoided a lot of pain in my past had that have been a thing. So cool. I'm glad you guys are doing that.
It's totally about time, and we're super excited to be able to bring that to folks working at that level of development, right?
Yeah, you know what? It's like I don't want to go too in depth, but we sort of soft announced the mod community for Weird West.
Yeah.
So this indie licensing makes it possible to actually take my session, my Wwise session, and really just go ham with it and make whatever you want out of it. So that's really cool.
That is awesome because, of course, previously we had a limit on the number of sounds that you could generate as part of that free license. So you're right. Go ham. It's going to be awesome to hear what people get up to with that.
I am a little worried that people will go through my session and be like, what was he thinking?
Well, I've seen a lot of Wwise projects, and I tell you, there is a very unique way that people, it's an expression. Like Wwise is an expression, and there's something that I've seen in your pursuit and your presentation of sound design, and that's just really that, with Wise, I feel like you can think it and do it.
Absolutely.
And sometimes that's not pretty, but it's
Right.
ultimately about, does it work? Does it convey whatever the intention is that you're trying to do?
Yeah, that's something. It's funny because when you start, especially in game audio, prior to Wise, when you're using an XML sheet or using some sort of abstract tool, this things like the Soundcaster
Yeah,
and things like
yeah,
that were just massive game changers for me. And it's true. It's like I feel like it's funny that I've been using Wise slightly less than I use Pro Tools or Pro Tools or a tool like that.
yep,
Yeah, it's just like a part of my DNA at this point.
exactly. And so everyone's DNA is different and great. I can't wait to unpack your Wise project a little bit and see more about how your brain maps into those Wise hierarchies. But let's take a step back. Let's take a step
Certainly,
back.
certainly.
Like, we've known each other a long time. I love the origin story of Matt Piersall in the games industry. So tell me a little bit about how you navigated to this place today and what came before it.
Yeah, right. In college, I was studying music at the University of North Texas, and my my dad actually wouldn't let us have a Nintendo, but we could have a computer and play computer games on the sly.
Sure.
That was kind of a thing. My brother was very into games, and one time I came home from college. I'd always loved to play video games, but not that I wasn't allowed to. It just wasn't one of those things that permeated the household. It was more of like a secret hobby.
Yeah.
But I came home from college, and my mother, she was like, I was in this band. It was a psychedelic rock band called Coles to Newcastle with the Chainsaw. Shout out Matt Cheney from over at Arcane right now.
Yeah.
But he, we were in this band together, and my mom heard the music, and she goes, "That sounds kind of druggy." She goes, "You should make music for video games." And at the time, you're like, some of those games Tyler plays. Shout out Tyler Pearsall. Some of those games Tyler plays. This music might work for that. And you're like rebellious at the time. I'm like, whatever, you don't fucking know anything. But then I was like, that's actually a pretty good idea. And I found Electronic Musician magazine.
Yeah.
And it said sound design for fun and profit. And I was like, maybe there's something to this thing. And I was in another psych rock band at the time, and there was a voice actor that was the sampler guy. So I was like the percussionist, and he would like sample me and remix me. And that guy's name is Chris Sabbat. Chris Sabbat is the voice of Vegeta, Piccolo, Yamcha, Dragon Ball Z. I think he's in, I don't keep up with anime, but Attack on Titan. I think he's in Attack on Titan.
Okay, NBD, right? Okatron.
Yeah, he's
Okatron.
Okatron.
Yeah.
Okatron. Just a genius voice director, voice actor, good all around good dude.
Yeah.
But he got me a job at Funimation. So my first sort of intro into the business was actually working on anime.
Gotcha.
And I looked at the amount of anime companies versus the amount of video game companies, and also like the anime world. Like I liked video games more. I like solving those problems, developing new IP. All the stuff that we did from the anime side was, it's established. It's like, this is your roadmap. And I really like the idea of doing games because you could develop that roadmap. And more often than not, games are fantastical and wild. And as a sound designer and as a composer and as an audio person in general, you're able to go a little bit more wild with it. He hooked me up with some game developers in Dallas, and no one would hire me. So I started a company called Gleek.
Gotcha.
And here we are.
Well, and then this is the leapfrog stepping stones that led us to meet, which was and maybe there was something before it, but Mushroom Men. Like to me, this was amazing moment in time. So describe Mushroom Man, because that had to be one of your first couple of projects.
So, so Mushroom Men actually came at the right time, and there was a studio, Red Fly Studio, that actually like they sort of hired me. This was probably year 5 of my career. Prior to that, most of my work was with either through the anime channels. I did the Full Metal Alchemist stuff, the Dragon Ball Z stuff, and Nintendo. So I worked with my mentor, Scott Peterson. Shout out Scott, shout out Retro, Bobby, Jeffy, baby, all the boys. Yeah, those. So they at Clark Wynn actually. Shout out Clark Wynn.
Yeah.
He gave me a chance on the second Metroid Prime when I really had no business doing it, to be quite honest. But I would say Clark and Scott taught me how to do game audio, and Clark gave me some great advice. It's like movies should sound like movies and games should sound like games. And I came back as more of like a lead role for Metroid Prime 3.
Yeah.
So I did Prime 2, Prime 3, Guitar Hero. I did the Guitar Hero games with Neversoft when Neversoft was doing them.
Yeah.
And Tony Hawk. And after all that, then I did Mushroom Men.
Which is which was my introduction to you for sure.
Mushroom Men, I think, was just the first time somebody trusted me with the keys.
Yeah.
You know, and so we just went bananas with it. We built a metronome system, so all of the game events were synchronized. And James Clarendon, shout out James, Damien DeFede. Those guys helped build the system that sort of drove the whole experience, and very cool. And like basically gave us a cool palette to work from.
Yeah.
And so we just, I mean, the whole Gleek team, Bobby, Arlaskis, Jimmy Barker, we just went nuts. Yeah. And we made all the music, and well, we didn't make it all. We worked with Les Claypool. That's not like a small thing. But yeah, we remixed his stuff.
Primus in the back pocket there, pretty much.
Primus.
Yep.
Yeah, it was just a really cool experience. It was my first time to work with. There was a studio called, publisher called Gamecock. And
yeah.
They were the original publishers, and that's Mike Wilson and Harry from Devolver. Now they do Devolver at this point, and it's funny because it's gone full circle. It's just here we are again.
There's so many great inception moments tied up in that, just very brief, and great to get the name checks in there because, again, like Bobby and Jimmy, like core Gleek history, and just all of those people and all of those times. But that Mushroom Man experience, tying sounds and music to a metronome, like this was a moment in time when there were very few studios doing it. Only studios at a certain level of, experience, and you just had a vision. And I loved how that arrived on screen in conjunction with what Red Fly was doing with that game. It was just a brilliant combination.
It's really a stroke of luck, honestly.
Yeah.
Because from a business standpoint, we were about 2 months away from going completely broke. And, these things happen. And I don't know why, but I was just like, I had 3 months of work in this Mushroom Men project. We have to finish it in 3 months. And I literally moved my studio from Richardson, Texas, where we officed with Okratron, to being studio mates with Red Fly.
Yeah.
And we were on site with the developers. And somehow it worked out.
Yeah.
But I moved 3 different families basically from Dallas to Austin with 3 months of work.
Yeah.
But I'm glad I did it, because I wouldn't do that now. I have like kids and all these kinds of things,
right.
Which like that really changes the stakes.
There was a moment in time where that was an acceptable risk. I get it. Okay.
Yeah.
So bring me fast forward from Mushroom Men to today. And I have a bit of a thread that I can weave to get us to Weird West, but help carry me there first. Like, what else?
So, I mean, there's so many things that happen from Mushroom Men. We immediately and this is like, I don't want to dive too much into the story, but Redfly was also producing a Wii version of the Ghostbusters game,
Right.
which happened to get canceled, which seemed like a bad thing, but Atari picked it up and gave it another year, which kept us in Austin another year, which was fantastic. At that same time that was going on, I became friends with and acquainted with the Disney studio in town,
Right.
and went on to direct the Epic Mickey game, the first Epic Mickey. And I just I worked with Nintendo again, and I've just had kind of a rotating list of clients. I worked with some great guys out in Seattle called Final Strike Games. We did a multiplayer game last year. I was always friends with the director of this game. Big shout out to Rafael Colantonio.
Right.
He's been a homie for a long time, and he's a musician himself. And so we were friends for a very long time, years. And then he asked me about essentially like, would I be interested in, because they had a studio in Lyon, Arcane Studios in Lyon, and Raph was, for some reason, luckily for me, wanted to live in Austin.
Yeah.
And they had a small studio in Austin with some core Looking Glass, Looking Glass, immersive sim people.
Yeah, we're talking like the Thief folks and System Shock and all that.
Absolutely.
Yep.
All those, all that group.
And I'll pepper a little bit in here because there was a little bit of Star Wars in between. And of course,
that's right.
The Arcane stuff. We were talking about working on Prey. And I guess for me, the thread is like, okay, you're talking psychedelic rock music in your youth. We got Mushroom Men, which is this just far out concept, and arriving now with Weird West in this kind of psychedelic Western, right? Which to me just seems to arrive just at exactly the nexus of Matt Piersall and where you've been.
You know, it's really true. You know, it's something that, like, as an artist, right, as a game developer, one thing that I there comes a point where the workload is so heavy, and the pressure is so immense that you sort of have to make it a job, right? To stay sane. You like forget to do your own creative projects. You forget to, you stop playing shows, you stop making your own music, and all these things. And that's kind of somewhere I had landed until I got involved with Arcane, specifically on Prey. And they just liked what I did. And all of a sudden games could kind of be my art again. And fast forward to doing the Weird West. I mean, I'm from Texas. I'm like, this is in my blood.
Yeah.
Like this sort of occult, scary, scary graveyard in the middle of nowhere by the oil fields. It's like that's what I was raised on.
Yeah.
And the psychedelic rock stuff to be able to do what I wanted to do in a world as like pretty as like vivid as this one was an incredible experience. Now, I will say, to be the one sole person having to kind of tie it all together was, and I did have some help. I got my shout out list here. I'm gonna mention some people.
Cool.
But that was a lot. But creatively, it was incredibly fun to work on.
Yeah, well,
exhausting but fun.
Of course, and I think what's really interesting is that you arrive at this as the audio director on this project, and I think in the conversation just now we can really see some of the steps and some of the places that you've been that allowed you to arrive at this place, and having that deep Texas history and your background with, let's be honest, weird Western kind of, perspective. So you're the aesthetic lead for this, for the audio side of this experience. And not only that, but this is the first project where you've been completely in charge of the music direction as well as the music itself.
Yes, that's true.
Right. And so
this one was, and that's something that, what I've learned from this experience is that you have to, with music, you cannot try to please everyone. You simply or it's going to be disingenuous.
Right.
It's not going to be, it's not going to serve the game necessarily.
Yeah.
Like, I think that with this one, I mean, granted, I talked with Raph a lot about it. So we did have conversations,
Yeah.
but I think that what was great about it is that he hired me to do it because he knew that what I would do would be in line with what the team wanted.
Yeah.
And what the IP needed.
Yep.
So it was a daunting task, but I found it to be just so cool. Like, I'd walk through a dungeon and I would play it, and I would do a couple of versions of the song, and then I would play it and I'd realize, oh, you're in here for hours, so I'm going to chill this out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And to be able to make those decisions without having to have 10 producers in a meeting and, oh, let's schedule this and schedule this.
Yeah.
There were no meetings with the music.
Right.
We just did it. It was done.
Yeah.
There were no meetings about audio. It's just like, hey, this is annoying. Cool. Hey, I noticed this. Cool. The team, the QA team was incredibly helpful, of course.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, wow, like, it's an immersive sim, so you're not going to see everything.
Yep.
So
this is the setup for me, and I know we're going to dig a little bit into the Wwise side of things. We've been talking a little bit about the tone and the style of this game. Let's give folks a bit of context here. Can we spin this this map vibes?
Absolutely, yeah.
Cool. So let's roll that for folks so they can get their ears on some of this music, because it really is cool stuff. Yeah. Love it. Okay, so that's just the map, right? Your introduction to this weird West. And one thing that you said is it's a sim. So you're going around from town to town. Like, spin me the story. How were you brought onto the project, and what kind of setup did you have for getting started with the production?
Yeah, I was brought onto the project. Actually, the first time I did anything for Weird West, I actually went and had a pint with you. I was staying down the street in Seattle, and Raph had sent me a short mock-up video.
Yeah.
And it was sort of a previs thing, and I did it on a laptop in the hotel room. And yeah, and I always, by the way, not that this is important, there's a pizza place called Rocco's, like over in yeah, that place is like, it's just like my home. Like, you have everything you need over there. You got 2 bars that you can sit out on a patio, great pizza. Down the other way, there's some good food. It's just a fantastic little area.
Dude, that pear gorgonzola with the gluten-free crust, like, every time.
Gorgeous.
Dude,
okay. Fantastic vibes there too.
Yeah.
Anyway,
okay.
So I was given a previs video. I did the previs video. And then it's essentially like we had just a map that you wandered around in, pretty much. And it was about picking objects up, going into a town, and it's just basically a town sim. Okay. There's no combat or anything like that. So I created a piece of music for the town, and then I created the town, it would rain, and there would be a windstorm.
Yep. So
I created a weather system. Then it would become day and night. So I created a day-night cycle for the sound.
Yep.
And then there was an interior-exterior thing. So we created a very simplistic interior-exterior system. So that's sort of how we got started. We got started. I tend to prefer getting started on a systemic side.
Yep.
Like, I don't necessarily care about the what's the word I'm looking for? like the specifics of the style, the
Yep.
the artistic approach will reveal themselves as the game reveals itself to you.
Right. That aesthetic
So
kind of comes in, but having the system in place means that you can, well, experiment with different tonalities. What's working, what isn't working. But
yes,
without that system in place, well, you're either painting in 2D in a linear digital audio workstation, or you're just imagining it right in your head.
absolutely. And I believe there's a power in pre-production, a
Yeah.
power in just running to the wilderness. But for me, I had different moments of that. Like I'd always kind of had these romantic visions of like going out to like Marfa or something and just cooling out and writing the whole soundtrack. And I never got to do that, but I did, I did write a lot of it during COVID and just kind of get to do a lot of nature walking and got on the paddle board a lot and just really got to think about it. But yeah, I'm systems first, because you're correct. You need to know what you're painting first.
Sure.
You need to know sort of how to author the content so that you can author it in such a way that, like, if I know that I need X, Y, and Z transitions, then I can make those awesome.
Yep.
But if you start from the artistic, then you're going to try to edit something to fit in the system.
Sure.
And I think just submit to the system and see if you're worthy.
Well, and it sounds like you're in early enough where, you're starting with the team. The team is growing. The world is growing, and you're growing with that world. And with that, the systems, as they are implemented and evolve, they evolve with the team and with the team who's building the systems. And so you have that rich connection when you're part of that process early on, so that you can not only like hit your lasso onto the wagon, but like also help steer it as as it's being built.
This was, this particular project has been really unique because as a contract audio person, you're typically hired as a support person.
Sure.
Or you're hired if they don't have or don't want to staff their own department for whatever reason.
Right.
And I just want to say, first and foremost, like, shout out to all clients, Ubisoft, those guys. Shout out Ubisoft SFO, Dusseldorf. We're going Dusseldorf.
Boosh.
Yeah,
we didn't talk about your brief sojourn in Berlin, but okay.
Oh, right. Yeah, we can do that. Montreal, Toronto. Anyway, like, there's a couple more too. But there's so many people to like mention, like it's not even funny.
Yeah.
But I think the thing is that typically you're hired to sort of be directed, right?
Yeah.
We need you for a purpose. You're a mercenary.
Yep.
You're going to be here a short time. You jump in, you slit a throat, you get out, right? And then this one is very different because the team was it was an indie team. They were all distributed from the get.
Yeah.
And like the team was put together because everyone has a history of creating this type of game, including myself. So I got a new autonomy that I'd never had before.
Yeah.
And that really allowed me to, quite frankly, do my best work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and you had that relationship, the trust and the experience to really go deep on it. Speaking of that, like, I'm itching to unpack some of the music systems that are part of this, but I just want to make sure folks have enough context to understand the world. And so it's an isometric 3D open world experience, right? It's got narrative. It's got that hardcore simulation side of things. Mm-hmm. So where are you going to take us musically on this journey?
Ooh, everywhere.
Okay.
So do you want me to show you the system?
What do you think? Are we ready to unpack that?
Yeah. Let me see. Let's look in the chat here. Does anybody not know what the game is? Or
we got some very good high praise for Weird West going on.
Oh man, Restream Bot, I love you. Oh, it's Amazon. It's Amazon. Hi, shout out Amazon,
Amazon
a New World
Austin.
team.
What?
No, Amazon New World team, man.
Oh yeah.
We're going New Worldwide, baby.
Okay. Austin's in the house. Cool. So,
Hey, Austin.
where are we going in this project? Are you ready for it?
So yeah, I'll show you the music system.
All right.
You know, like, let's see here.
And so spin me, you're like a desperado out on the open west. You get dropped into this experience. Like, do you have a theme song? Do you have like what's your vibe as this person?
I went anti-theme song.
Okay.
Like I wanted, so like what I wanted to break it down into, and I'll show you real quick. In fact, I'm going to show you switch containers because I know everybody loves a switch.
Oh yeah.
This is, well, they're technically not switches. Let's see. Our game sinks here are states.
Yep.
Let's take a look here. All right. So this is a bit complicated, but follow me here.
I'm with you.
So we have our music global state. This is the state of what type of map you're on.
Got it.
So this informs your like basic sort of ambient music and your ambient like the 2D ambience.
Yep.
And then below that state, well, actually above that state, we have our music menu.
Yep.
Which is our main, we have a posse. We used to have a posse screen, character creation. We used to have a character begin journey and the travel state. Now below that, this is another driver here. We have a cinema, death, game, main menu, travel map, and then this gets crazy. So this is why when you're talking about a theme, this is probably the closest thing here. This is what I call our encounter state. So in the case of Weird West, I wanted to go try to, because there's so much ground to cover.
Yeah.
I couldn't say, very rarely could I say this is a specific moment, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But so what I had to do is I had to be abstract kind of about everything, honestly. But I would say, what's the general vibe? All right. So we see here, we've got an ambush scenario.
Yep.
We've got a positive hunter. And what that would mean is like, this ended up being like, you did a good thing.
Cool.
We have story moment, dark, grim, hero, madness, mystical, soft, tense, story werewolf, and then zombie encounter, which honestly shouldn't be there, but I fucked up.
Wow.
And then below that, we have these moments here.
Cinematic. Got
moments, it. Yes. And I actually have more because what was happening, and I don't know people that have made a game like this before, the actual order of operations could not be stopped, even with Wise's stop this music, stop this, do this. So I kind of had to fake it. So that's why this is so thin. But yeah, and then this is our location state, exterior, interior, underground.
Got it.
Now, we go here.
So, but pause for a second. So for folks who are not hip to states in Wise and their use in the music system, right? These are things that you call either through Wise events or over on the game side. They're used to define different either game states or just states in Wise to help you pilot your interactive music system, right? And so
that's absolutely correct.
And so that spectrum of states that we just looked through, can be combined into the result of what the music is at any given moment. And
that's right.
And so that's the setup, right? That's why states are so valuable, because they underpin the implementation in the music system to be able to play the right thing at the right time based on this infinite possibility space of the game, right?
Absolutely. And the beautiful thing about using states in a music system is that your chances of doubling up the music or tripling the music or having this thing layer weird with this thing, that's gone.
Yeah.
Because it's all handled within a state.
Yeah.
You're never hitting another event. And a thing that you run into, especially in making an immersive sim like this, sometimes the states just continually fire.
Yeah.
And the reason they fire is that they need to update themselves on the game side. And in theory, yes, you could build a loop to say check, check, check.
Sure.
But Wwise makes it easy. And when you're doing all the implementation plus the composition and sound design, you kind of need quick.
Yeah.
You got to move fast.
Totally. Hey, good to see you, Chase, in the chat. Excellent.
Chase in the chat.
Chase Bethia, right?
Shout out Chase
Digging
Bethia.
it.
Good to see you, man.
Katie, she says she loved your work on Muppets Go to Hollywood. Thanks, Katie.
Shout out Katie Lee. That's my girlfriend. She's in the other room.
Perfect.
We're not talking. No, I'm kidding.
You're talking through the internet. It's a thing.
Can we get sushi tonight? Anyway.
Play us some of this. Give us
Sure.
Give us a scenario that would happen in the game. Set up your project so that we get the result of one of these things. I want to hear what it sounds like when a werewolf is up on you. That sounds crazy.
Sure. All right. So I've got a couple of these. I'm going to start here. I'm going to go simple. So this is going to be, we are outside.
Yep.
Let's see. We're going to be outside, exterior. The mix state is game. The combat state is chill. And we're going to do, let's see. I'm just going to go to our overworld desert. And I'll show you why in a moment. So this is the most simple thing that will play in the game.
Yeah.
So this is the theme for like foresty. This is desert / forest. So I use this for two things.
Yep.
Let's see if this is the general, like I'm in a desert or whatever. But something I want to show about this.
Got to have that rattlesnake tail. That's real.
You got to.
Yep.
And I don't want to. I did not fuck around. I had live rattlesnakes in the studio.
I expect that.
So check this out, gang. All right. So what I got here is in this element right here. This is my overworld pad A. So if I solo this, it's just that, and it randomizes between 3 different versions.
Great. So we're seeing a segment with 3 random tracks in it. Yeah.
Exactly. And then in this right here, this is the lyra. And the lyra, I don't know, let me see if I can pull this out. This is the sort of secret sauce to the soundtrack.
Oh, yeah.
This is a lyra, it's an organismic synthesizer. And it's basically like it's a meditative box.
Yeah.
But it sounds like it's the lyra. So these things randomize.
It's great. We have a
And then
developer at
below
AK
that-
with a set of those. And speaking of that,
cool.
Slong Champs is in the chat. Rattlesnake. Yeah.
Love it. And then we have a state here. So this is this section playing. This is no sneak, right?
Got it.
So we're not sneaking. And as soon as you crouch, just literally press the controller in. We layer this. That's a beat I made out of a chair. The chair and the rattlesnake.
Yeah.
The rattlesnake was shockingly rhythmic.
Yes.
Anyway.
He was sitting in the chair or?
Sitting in the chair, just ready to jam.
Yeah.
Very, very cool, very misunderstood species.
Yeah.
All right, this is the nighttime theme. I want to show you this. So if you happen to camp and you wake up at night, this is this. And to be honest, I kind of got lazy on the nighttime theme because I'm like, dude, if I write, you see how many tracks I've got here?
Yeah.
This is the ambient music for this. So I was like, this is the night theme, whatever. But I love this thing right here. There's sound about to happen, which is this synthesizer called the Dreadbox Erebus.
Okay.
And what I love about it is it's always out of tune. Shout out Dreadbox.
Yeah.
Well, it's not always out of tune. It's just incredibly hard to get into tune.
I know Dreadbox from effects. They make pedal effects too with a bunch of
do.
CV options on them. It's great.
Really awesome stuff.
Yeah.
So this is the nighttime theme. Okay, so that's our sort of chill vibes, right?
Okay, so
And then-
I just need to clear something up for the chat now. Was there
Certainly.
actually rattlesnakes in the studio, or was it a joke? And again, don't try this at home.
Okay, yeah. There were no rattlesnakes in the studio.
Okay.
I just wanted you guys to like me.
Yeah.
All right.
I like you, Matt. I like you.
Okay, I like you too.
Rattlesnakes
Okay.
or not.
Yeah.
Okay, don't hurt yourself out there, people.
Please do not. So below this is all the chill music. And so we have our interior, exterior, and underground. So that means if I'm in a desert and I happen to be able to go into a cave, that's when we would go into our underground. And so a lot of these are used. See here, I've got basically an underground cave theme.
Yep.
I call this the witches theme. And my daughter is actually on this track. Very ambient, you know. Yeah.
Yeah. I've met your daughter.
That's her voice.
That's her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. She was like 4 at the time, I think.
Yeah, yeah. Almost fully formed, though.
Oh, absolutely. She came out with a personality.
Yeah.
Just mad personality.
100%.
So above that, now when we go into our encounters, right? So our encounters are like these random moments that can happen in the game.
Got it. So you just woke up, you're out in the town doing your thing.
Yeah.
Encounter.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yes, exactly. And so I'm actually going to show you these here because I like these better. These are sort of what I ended up doing. Like this is my heist track.
Cool.
I love this track. This is one of the first things I wrote for the game. And I used the Moog Minotaur and the Mother.
Yeah.
And guitar. And that just loops. So this would be a moment like, I mean, the game's got some very dark undertones. So this is like, oh, you find out like they've been eating people or whatever. Spoiler alert, people get eaten. Sorry.
Yeah. It's only a game.
So it's only a game. We have 4 versions of this. Yeah.
Well, and I think what people are seeing, hopefully, as you're navigating around in here, is that you're really in on this randomization thing. Like,
absolutely,
there are tons of variations in here. As you're randomizing and sequencing these things, you're constantly wanting to keep that soundtrack fresh. Now, one part of that is, of course, just how the states transition between each other as you go in and out of them. But then this other piece that we're seeing here in the encounters is just you're creating multiple variations of the music for these encounters, and you're getting more variation out of it as they continue to loop around and play.
Exactly, and it allows you one thing. Shout out Kevin Michael Johnson, Super Evil Megacorp team. Hey guys. The reason I do a lot of randomization is because what I find is that with a game like this, there's an overwhelming amount of things that you can do.
Right.
So you need to be able to, sort of let the game. You're designing a piece of software.
Yeah.
Ultimately,
yeah.
I mean should be obvious, but so the software needs to be able to. You need to fairly simply be able to say, "Hey, software, do this thing," and that software does something magical. There are times where you kind of have to override a systemic game like this. Like part of your job is overriding some of the systems to get it to work, and that's complicated because with something like the weather system, for example, or I made a sound. I really wanted to talk about this thing. In fact, it's on my notes. I don't want to get too far away from the music.
Yeah.
But I do want to show you something because it's really hacky, but I was really proud of it.
I'll take
Let's see. All right. So those in the chat, have you ever had that problem where you load a level and all of your physics drop and a bunch of the weird sounds start and like this happens, right?
Oh yeah.
And so we try to fix it. Typically, I'll mute this bus and then unmute it. The problem is that I didn't get the start game state soon enough. So you'd always hear like a bad pop.
Yeah.
So what I decided to do is I decided to go pretty hardcore on the whole thing. And I ended up creating this sound called the Weird West start tone rev. Because my other one was just too much. That sounds like this. And so what it does is I actually put a ton of, like, if you look right here, there's a hard transient at the very beginning of this.
Yeah.
And a lot of that is below, like we're talking like below what you can hear.
Yeah.
And then I put it like a very hard, what I use a transient designer on it to like really pop it.
Yep.
And so that happens to just catch all of those physics objects
Yeah.
and all of the computer doing computer stuff.
Yeah.
Before it actually happened. So I ended up using a sound, and I tied that. So I love this so much. I tied that to a bus called SFX Back to Life.
Got it.
Back to Life has a Wise meter on it.
Yep.
This Wise meter, it's called Resurrect.
Yep.
And now if we look at our sound bus, if we look at our in-world SFX bus on the RTPC side, boom, Resurrect. Look at that.
Boosh.
Minus 24.
Just dunk it. Yeah.
Just dunk it all the way.
So when that meter pops, it forces that RTPC on the sound effects bus into mute or quiet.
It doesn't quite mute it. Like what I love about being able to design these curves is that so instead of creating that hard pop, if it does happen, what it does is it just softens the attack on those sounds.
Nice.
And so that's why I ended up using a sound versus like a command to mute.
Yeah.
And so I was just like, there's another sound in here, like the in between.
Yeah.
I initially.
Folks in the chat are vibing on this. Yeah.
Oh, great! I'm glad, y'all.
Yeah.
Man. That's really cool, man.
Yep.
So this is called The Space Between, and it's not the famous Christian song, The Space Between.
There's a future for you.
Yeah, I know. Christian bookstore
The
owner.
space between loads.
This is the space between loads, and it's just guitar feedback.
Cool.
That I recorded, and I put that there because I was trying to see what was happening in the music system.
Yeah.
And I just put that there as kind of I put that there to see if anything was happening.
Yeah.
It was sort of like, is the sound dying? Are we shutting off the sound engine, or are we not? And I found out we're not. And I'm like, you know what? It's kind of cool to have guitar feedback.
Yes.
Prior to, it's almost like your band is warming up.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
Oh, I love that technique. What a cool thing.
Yeah.
And these are just things that as you're going through development, on one hand, you're using them to like illustrate the system. Like, what is the system doing? But then the side effect of it, because you're working with the sound and you're doing it all yourself, you're not like, oh, let me put this, whale song in here, which, okay, that idea is free. But, let me put in this contextually appropriate sound that I'm already working with in the course of my compositions. Right. And when it lands in the full mix, it feels right. Yeah. And that's why I would imagine you kept it.
Yeah, absolutely. This one more than any, this is definitely a hot water topic, so I apologize in advance. But I really was sort of fighting against having a music slider. Yeah. Or even a voice slider. It's the voices I can kind of understand because there's times where I'm like, it's a bit annoying. And there's some things that are going to sound annoying in this game, and I totally get it. Yeah. It's just the nature of game development. Yeah. But I like the idea of being like, to me, the sound design and the music and even the voice stuff, it's a cohesive whole. Right. Right. It's meant to be like, I know you're a fan of the shoegaze psychedelic rock thing. And if there's a band from the early 90s called My Bloody Valentine, and they used voice in a way that it was another instrument versus this thing to focus on. And so I sort of feel like this is my Southern occult rock, electronic version of My Bloody Valentine. With My Bloody Valentine were to do a video game. Yeah. It's kind of a general sort of approach I had. I wasn't like sitting around going, would My Bloody Valentine, I didn't have a little bracelet, would My Bloody Valentine do it? But you know what I'm saying.
WWMBVD.
What would My Bloody, thank you.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you. That's what I was looking for. That's the hot.
And I get that reference, right? It's again, voice as another instrument. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so
right.
question from the chat.
Talk to me.
If you're getting the game start too late to mute the onslaught of physics objects, how are you getting that transient heavy effect in at the right time before that happens?
You look, the reality is you're not always, it's not always going to work because every system has different load times.
Got it.
What you have to do in a design, that's a great question, by the way.
Right.
What you have to, it's kind of like, think of it like it's analogous to what type of monitors you use.
Right.
And so I have 3 sets of monitors, but to mix the game, I use my Avontones.
Yep.
Because the Avontones are like the low level, what people are going to mainly experience. So I tried to sort of like get it at least mildly in the pocket.
Yeah.
It's not going to be perfect every time, unfortunately. So.
But it's one of those fuzzy interstitial spaces of game timing, right? That is somewhat malleable and flexible. And I think what I heard from what you were saying is part of the goal is to leverage those sounds because they're unique. Are you loading into an area that's got a bunch of wooden crates? Are they metal rattlesnake traps? Like, what is it? You're going to get some uniqueness from that you want preserved. And you're trying to just float in this piece on top to kind of help you blend it into the world space and just make it sound cool, right?
Absolutely. And, I think that in a perfect world, I would have spent more time making a more robust solution.
Yeah.
Like, ideally. But, when you're doing pretty much most of it, you just run out of time because I would rather that be a little messy sometimes than parts of the game be silent.
Well, and this is a really important piece for anyone out there making games or people who are just trying to get into it, right? It's prioritizing things and getting it done.
Well, it's really easy. And like, this is something I personally have to fight.
Mm-hmm.
But you find when you work on games, especially when you work on them, I'm working in my own studio and I can go outside and walk around. Like, you kind of will find a little thing to get obsessed about.
Yeah.
Like, oh, this is my little project. I want this one thing to like really bang. But the ultimate thing is like, it has to serve the game as a whole.
Yeah.
So I put time limits on myself with things. I'm like, look, like, does it kill the experience? If it doesn't destroy the experience and the immersion, then, I'll move on.
Yeah.
But you have to kind of make that call.
Well, it's important. And I think you're onto something there that you cannot slay all the dragons. Right. Sometimes you got to leave a few around to, keep things spicy and keep a little bit of humanity in there. But finding those opportunities to weave that humanity in at the right level is that's the good stuff.
Absolutely, and it's changed. Like like old man warning here. But when I was shipping games on disc, during PlayStation 2, Xbox One, that era, or even PS3, 360, like. Or Wii. I mean, you would put the game on a disc and you could never touch it again.
Yeah.
It's a little different now. And I think that's development wide. That's not an audio only thing. It's not that people are less careful. I think they're very careful. I just think you can be more risky because a patch is possible.
Right. Right. And maybe that even takes some of the pressure off having to arrive with the perfect presentation on day one when you have a patch where if things get really unhinged in a system, okay, maybe it doesn't need to be like that forever, and maybe sweating it up front Well, if
Yeah.
you don't, maybe it's just a little bit saner on the road to launch, right?
Well, I will say, like, I massively messed it. You know, we say massively, but I had during Prey, you know, like
Yeah.
I'd worked on it for like 4 years or
Yeah.
something, and I didn't realize that you know, you hear this date, oh, we get pushed, and then I'm just like, reality means nothing to me. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so there came a point where I'm like, they say they're going to ship it this day, but there's no way.
Yeah.
You know, but they did.
Okay.
We had so we had a day one patch, and so that's when I mixed the game.
Sure.
So people that didn't have the day one patch heard a very different Prey than
Interesting.
you did if you would have bought the game and patched it on day one.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Wild.
that was not my best idea.
Well, we execute what we can, and okay, people playing Prey today, they got the patch. They're doing all right.
Yeah, they're fine.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I think it's on Game Pass.
Question for you, like, let's circle back to dialogue. You were talking about dialogue as this kind of other instrument as part of the soundtrack. We heard your daughter in one of those tracks, and that was awesome. But I got this dialogue vibes video. Is now a good time to talk about that?
Yeah, show that. Yeah.
All right, cool. I'm going into that, and let's see what that looks like. So I'm getting the voice as instrument in that, and we're about to dig into the dialogue tool. You ready for that? Okay, we'll come out of that and surface into a discussion.
This is the Wise side of what's happening. There is a sort of global event that fires with the dialogue tool here. This event is play NPC emote, and I have three things that happen. The NPC emote, which is here, which breaks down by character type. So I've got all these different character types here, and then below that I've got the chicken's not gonna. Okay, I've got a couple of different emotes. I have options for a lot of different emotes, but I've just sort of filled out a few for some generic characters. So in this case, there's the chatter for Leela. And the way that we fire off that stinger is the same way because it plays the same thing. I've just set the state of this, the main state of the stinger to play nothing. But when I want a bit of drama, I go here and I'm using the same system, but I've only assigned these. So Stinger Q, in this case it's Stinger Mystic, which is, what is Stinger Mystic? Stinger Mystic is Wanderer Mystic. So that's how I would accent a piece of dialogue with music versus VO. But it's essentially a Qbert system. I either have a stinger or I have a little bit of dialogue.
Well, and that makes sense, right? These stingers are underscoring that dialogue side of things, and so on the dialogue side itself, like, is there English language in this, or is it its own thing?
No, it's its own thing. There's a plugin for Ableton called Buffer Shuffler.
Okay.
And so it just slices, so you can take a bit of. There's I forgot what it's called, but it's basically like the licensing where you can remix something.
Got it.
And I found a bunch of speeches and interviews with like Appalachian people and drug dealers and pimps and
fitting in the
like
world.
that.
working with the world.
Yeah. Just like try to find the like sort of rougher edge of humanity. And I would just put them into the buffer shuffler thing and slice up these like tiny fragments and then sort of resequence them and get just a general vibe. This was because I noticed as you were going through that, it's like it looks like I've left a lot of like slots, switches empty. And the reason I did that is because to try to convey the amount of emotion we had access to. It's just, it would have been hard to author all the content in a convincing way.
Well, and not every character maybe needs to have all their emotions. I know in real life sometimes we don't. And so that's okay too, right? It's okay to leave some missing pieces in that behavior. And I bet where you needed it, you used it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it was one of those things that's like, it was not, I'm not gonna say difficult, but it was a challenge to do that because the script is massive and very detailed, and it also branches in a lot of ways. So it's hard to, if you're playing, that's what was difficult about making this game in general. There's so many ways to play the game that it's nearly impossible to catch all of the options that can happen. You know, so you have to just sort of create a system generic enough to hopefully catch most things and hope that it works.
And what you're saying is like you build the system. The system includes all possibilities, right? But we're not at the place yet where you can just author for all possibilities. Like you need to narrow and focus either because of time constraints or content quantity. Or I think part of what I'm hearing and what you're saying is, you know, sometimes folks aren't just they're just not gonna have a response to a certain scenario. So just let it roll and put it where it counts. This is kind of back to that other tenet that you were unfolding about knowing where to prioritize and put your effort.
I feel like that this game, you know, hopefully I'll be iterating on it for a long time, and you know, as time goes on, I can perfect it. You know, it's like, what do they say? Films escape; you don't finish them. You know, exactly. It's the same concept. You know. Like I also did. You know, I tried some more. I'm trying to find where that would be.
Dig in.
But I had this like grand concept for there's these sequences where you're being branded as the traveler. You know, you're moving into a new body. So here's the music for that. Let's see if I can find it. F10.
Oh yeah.
I'm you know, after a while it's
a muscle memory thing.
It is, absolutely. All right, so where's our stingers here? Beautiful. So this is the track for whenever you are getting branded. And then as the dialogue happens, there's this thing called ritual voices. So in this case, the voices are synchronized. So we can see here, our stingers are, let's see, I think they're synchronized to the beat. Next bar.
Got it.
They're on the next bar, and we allow them to overlap because I don't care. So somebody talks. In fact, do you mind if I turn that up so it's more apparent? Because I didn't feel like it was like super loud enough.
Cool, yeah, I love
but
it.
But in the game, I felt like it was fairly apparent. So yeah. Yeah. So what's funny is like I put all this work into that. And I'm not sure people associate the dialogue with these like abstract voices, but I thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah, well, and again, that's back to that blurring the lines between, you know, the WWMBV D, right? What would
Right,
a
right.
shoegazer do with this game soundtrack? And it seamlessly blends into the music in a way that is musical. Yeah.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah, I just thought it's cool, and like it was a way for me to sort of make like an interactive, mildly interactive experimental track.
yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I love it. PDX in the chat is saying, plussing up your comment about movies. The classical composer Ravel, you never finish a piece, you just give up on it.
That's absolutely true. Bravo! Shout out.
Said in French, of course, but
Yeah.
yeah. And so this is beautiful. It's weaving another piece of the puzzle of the soundtrack into the music. And again, as the audio director, as the lead vision holder for the sound, I wonder, is this all just in your mind? Does it all just feel like the same thing in some ways?
I think I break it into so I would break it into a couple of categories, and I try to keep things fairly simple, right? So it's an old reference, but I think it's powerful. Mario Brothers is I'm running around, I'm invincible, and I'm fighting a boss, or I'm under the ground, right?
Yeah.
So it has essentially 4 sort of core categories.
Yeah.
Weird West, we can map it. I'm exploring, I'm fighting, I'm listening to a story, or I'm dead. Or we'll add menu in there too, so we have 5.
Sure.
We're only one more advanced than Mario. So for the map and the death, like those are really key components for me, because the way that I design those UI sounds is in the key of the track.
Yeah.
So that was a big thing for me. So let me find the death thing. So this is a track that Weird Wolves did. They sent me this. This is a remix for the game. Shout out Weird Wolves.
Piersall, what's a Weird Wolf, man?
What's a Weird Wolf? Weird Wolf is Rafael Colantonio's rock band.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, they worked on some tracks, and I remixed them for the game and made them fit into the world. So like the opening menu song, Ghost Voices, and all that stuff. I got to produce all that stuff. Yeah,
That's fantastic.
Let me find. You know what? I wrote this sound. I also wrote "Show the Weather System."
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Well, and
Let's see.
you get through this, and then I'll drop one on you from our early conversation.
Please.
Okay, but give it to me first.
All right. So this might be my favorite sound in the game. This is whenever you die. So that's the death. And then the resurrect. Okay, so this all plays in, because it's that sound brings in the from a key wise.
Yeah.
What you're about to hear. Let's see. We'll do sync group 2, baby. And then that flies in.
Nice.
And that goes into the next piece. So it goes this. And then when you select, say, I'm ready to resurrect, play that, and then boom. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, and what you just dissected there, is something that if you had that on a screen in a video, you could just kick back and score that. But the way that you've got that broken into the different pieces, that's games, right?
Yes.
It is its own unique medium, because you don't know how long it's going to be before someone presses that button. You don't know how long
Absolutely.
or when that's going to happen. And so again, I love seeing the pieces of that. And I don't know, like, was that all just part of, I'm imagining you like in your DAW, like having a jam, you got a bunch of pieces on the floor and a couple of cool things stuck up on the wall, and and then you get to a system like this and you're like, okay, that's it. Or was it different than that?
So That's a great question. And the way that I work is this. Like I would say my philosophy is I let computer do computer, and I provide computer with enough content so computer can sound badass, right?
Yeah.
Computer sound badass. So in the case of anything I did, especially for this game,
Yeah.
there's no Jira list really until the end.
Yep.
There's no this is a priority here, this is a priority here. It all works from me playing the game and saying this feels empty. So when I work on a project, I'm like, I'll go, like, this death thing was a very specific time period where I was like, all right, I've got this thing I need to cover something in this quest. And I kept dying, and the dying sequence really bothered me.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I'm going to fix this dying sequence.
Yeah.
And I reworked that was my next thing to fix. And so I made that my priority. And once that's dialed in, then I go back to the other thing.
Yeah.
But I always play, and I'd be like, oh, this doesn't make a sound, or this makes too much sound, or
Sure.
whatever,
Well, and we're kind of back to where we were in the beginning, where you were talking about systems leading the sound. And
That's right.
And my guess is that you prop that system up with some events based on actions that were happening in the game. Maybe you throw some sounds at it, and you're like, hey, like, I'm cool, I'm going to move on to other stuff. But then after, well, most games you're living and dying a lot.
Right.
After that cycle, you were just like, okay, well, that was good. I know how it doesn't work. Now let me take that pass at it where I'm like, I'm going to do it right in the context.
So I want to show you something in regards to that.
Yeah.
Because my very first part of the process is I implement first.
Cool.
Which is, and I don't implement content that you would want to put in the game.
Right.
Hopefully my changes will be cool. Okay. So in this situation, I have so what happens a lot of times, you are in a scenario and you're like, the sound, you're not hearing the sound.
Yep.
So I have all of these different debug. These are 2D debug sounds.
Beautiful.
With no states, going straight to the master.
Yeah.
And my initial hookup is to just get all of these in.
Yep.
And I'm like, okay, this is how, because if I'm designing for a creature, for example,
Yep.
I'm like, I listen for the tones and I can go, oh, debug 2D is tied to this thing.
Got it.
And I only heard it one time in the whole encounter.
Yep.
I heard debug 2DB
Yep.
like 50 times. My priority is going to be in whatever that sound is.
Yep.
That's my vibe there.
What do they sound like? Play them back. Are they just synth tones or what?
Yeah, this is the Wise synth. Let's see.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The rest of these are like just straight this. And then I have this Debug Systems. And this is me. Did I get rid of these? I might have.
Maybe. Or it's under a state.
Huh.
I don't know.
I hope it's not under a state of emergency.
Oh, well, but they're basically
It's me literally saying indoors,
outdoors.
outdoors, underground,
Funny.
indoors, outdoors. And I do that because there's sometimes, and it happens even currently, that the interior exterior underground system failed me.
Yep.
So I needed to like kind of understand, sometimes when you go into a house, it goes indoors, outdoors, indoors, outdoors, indoors, right?
Yes.
So it switches that way. So to hear the words, it really helped me to be like, oh, that's how this works. Now I say all that because you were talking about my process. I never capture footage, hardly ever. I just play the game and I'm like, boom, and I go quick.
Yep.
And I'm a big Ableton person, so I use Ableton to Audition. I put a long file in from Audition directly into Wise. So the majority of the sounds in Weird West are not, and this is, everybody has their own process, but if I'm not mistaken here, there's four.
You got to
of
dock
these in
that
here.
source editor for us. Sorry.
Oh, dig it. Yeah. So.
Yeah, sure. So you're doing those edits for variations right in Wise.
Exactly.
Yep.
And I do that because this is like non-destructive editing,
Yep.
sort of. I can go in, I can, whatever,
Yeah,
if I
absolutely.
wanted to. And so I do all of that in Wise, and I send out some like very long form stuff. There's some just straight up jams that I put in
Yeah.
there, and I'm like, edit that bit, and I kind of jam in the tool a lot. But my goal is once I get the beeps in, I go, okay, now I need this. Now I need this. Now I do this. And then I just jam it. I'm like, that's not working. Pop that. This is working. Cool. Then I mix it and then I move on. And then I come back to it.
And that's kind of what I was imagining. Again, based on you have a great presentation out there on your YouTube channel from GDC talking about sound design for games using Ableton. And your process is really on display in that. And I was imagining that as part of this here. It's really improvisational, right?
Absolutely.
And you mentioned, no Jiras. Maybe you got a spreadsheet or two out there somewhere, but the way that you've employed these audio signposts throughout the game that give you access to what's happening and understanding into what's happening lends itself to you being able to just navigate your day, it sounds like. Turn over a rock when something cool jumps out and just throw down on the most important things that come up.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. And it's important. I mean, like, obviously it's like I've been a little overly busy lately, but part of the thing that made this Weird West thing work for me was that I built in, I'm just going to play the game for an hour and see what happens.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, I would be like, wow, okay, this is driving me nuts.
Yep.
Something because I feel like the ultimate, and I understand why people do it. I want to make that very clear. But when you have a big project and like you have 2 months to do it, I think there's a tendency from people that aren't audio people to try to hire 900 people to like fix the issue.
Yeah.
But game development's a difficult process. The team is a unique thing. The tools and the workflow and the pipeline are a unique thing. So, I would rather, I think that time is the best tool.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. A question coming in from the chat. How do you handle multi-channel in Ableton? Or are you doing a lot of multi-channel over there?
That's a great question. I don't do any multi-channel in Ableton. Ableton is I use Ableton for stereo and mono source files. Ableton is because I haven't really needed to mix much for 5.1 or multi-channel in this particular project. If I do need multi-channel, I'll use Nuendo because I think it's better at that. But Ableton, even if I need to do multi-channel, like a mix, I'll create an Ableton because to me, Ableton is at least my quickest, most expressive form of actual sound design.
Yeah.
For mix, though, there's a lot of better things out there.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Thanks for the question in the chat. And
absolutely,
I love it. So I'm kind of edge of my seat here with this Combat Vibes video.
Okay.
Should
cool,
we
cool, yeah.
should we spin that, give folks a taste, and then dive into some of those systems?
Yeah, let's do it.
I'm gonna roll that, and then we can talk more about it. Nice. So you've got this kind of slow-mo vibe going during those
Mhm.
sections. Is that just time dilates when you're in an encounter like that under combat?
It is, yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. And so then we've got a lot happening there, right? You're
Yeah.
you're getting attacked from all sides.
Yeah, for sure.
The sound of the weapons. Tell me a little bit about that, because you clearly have something unique going on there with the way that you've approached the sound of those. What was
Yeah,
that?
for sure.
What was that like?
There's two things. So the weapons they're kind of designed in a traditional way. There's a couple of, I did use libraries because I'm technically terrified of guns,
Yes.
the actual ones.
Fair.
But I think that the big thing that makes this work are these right here. These are our hit ticks.
Got it.
And they're just really transient.
Yep.
That's just essentially like a kick drum. It's melee. Stab. I don't love the stab, but it worked.
Okay, but
There's arrow.
But this is just a tiny slice of what's happening there. So when is this sound even playing?
That sound is playing when you connect with your shot with an enemy.
Got it.
Because that's the most important thing. And I also did something there that I do want to show. Let me see if I can. Let's see. States, slow-mo. Okay. So if I hit and I'm just in regular time,
Yep.
we're cool. Then if I'm in slow-mo when I hit, it's not game hit tick type. Slow-mo game mix. Sorry, guys.
No.
Where in the world is this happening? There it is.
Yeah.
I put the delay on it.
Cool. So when you're in slow-mo during an encounter or during an attack,
Yeah.
you get that crazy cha-cha-cha-cha-cha.
Yeah, you get the delay.
I love it.
Yeah. So that's part of it. And then I'll show you guys weapons if you want to see weapons. There are two types. And actually, shout out Ryan Stunkel. Ryan Stunkel helped me figure this out. Blip sounds.
Nice.
Let's see. Weapons here. And then I have player versions of the weapons. And then I have enemy versions of the weapons.
Great.
So I know blank containers are dangerous.
No, I love them.
But I have this. I want to get rid of this
Yeah.
for a second. Let's focus on what's important. The family. So that's basically the shot there. But I also have this exterior element
Got
and
it.
an indoor element, which is muted in this case.
Yep.
And it's because I'm in the exterior.
Got it.
That's indoors. So I'm indoors and I'm outdoors.
Got it.
And that's the revolver. That's the main revolver rifle.
Yep.
This actually, I want to show something that I think is incredibly important. And that's the way that I've been designing these things. And hopefully unfortunately, I can't show you what I really did in Audition, because to share this, I can't share all the sound. This is a great one right here. Let's do number 3. So do you see how the beginning of the envelope is the small section,
Yes.
right? Now I literally will design the sound.
Yeah.
And then I'll go into Audition and I'll splice in a hard transient.
Got it.
And without it, it's amazing what kind of punch it adds to the whole experience.
Sure. That's a pro tip.
This is the silence
Yep.
weapon. Then there's a shotgun.
Yeah.
And our interior version.
Yep.
Yeah.
And synthetic elements? Do you have anything?
Yes. This device right here was key to this whole thing. Let me pop it. This is the Electron Rhythm.
Right.
analog rhythm, and so kick drums and claps
Yeah.
and like hats, I just distorted the shit out of them.
Yeah.
And they're in the weapon sounds.
Got it.
So you're basically firing essentially an 808 when you're shooting the guns, but that's not true for the enemies, because I wanted to distinguish between that. And you had to go like, if this was a multiplayer game, I think it'd be a different experience, but the power fantasy here is you're a Western badass, and
cleaning up town, cleaning up the bad elements, right?
That's right.
So that brings me to the weather system, if you were ready to go there. And I just want to drop 3 words on folks out there who are still with us, and that is tornado fire physics. Okay? And we're talking about a simulated game. So when you say that, like, what does it mean? And then dig into this systemic weather and systems.
Yeah.
Right?
So this one was quite complicated, actually.
Yeah.
So with the ambience and the weather is sort of handled a bit together. There is a 2D ambience global.
Yep.
Right? So we have our overground here. Oops. And we just have our map type.
Yep.
And then we have day and night. So that handles the 2D ambience. That's pretty simple. And then for weather, we have something fairly simple as well, which is our state-based weather system. So I have a state for, let's see here. We got clear skies, and that's essentially just a very subtle air tone. Light rain, none. Stormy. Underground was tough because it can still, like, that's a problem I ran into. It can still rain underground.
Yeah.
And so I had to kind of balance, like, because sometimes the system gets confused.
Yeah.
So instead of just putting nothing there, I put just kind of a general kind
room tone
almost
kind
like
of thing.
a room tony thing. Yeah, and that's pretty much it with the weather. However, other things, there's emitters. Let me see, that are in the world, ENV3D. Where did I put them? They're basically set. They're basically a switch container. I'm sorry, I can't.
You don't have to. You don't have to go there. We get it.
Essentially, it's a switch container.
Yeah.
That's an environmental emitter.
Yep.
And when it's raining, it plays a rain on surface
Plink,
sound.
plonk, plonk. Yep.
Exactly.
And it gets its surface information from the game somehow.
That's right. Yes.
Cool.
Yep. Tornado. I always have to say the word tornado because if I say tornado, I'll spell it like that. I'm very phonetic. Okay.
Question coming in from the chat is that surface detection for the rain attached to the player? Is it attached to some models in the game?
No, it's a great question. So it's actually hand placed.
Okay.
So what I actually have, rain on metal, rain on wood, rain on dirt.
Yep.
Pretty much it. And I'll just look at the surface. I'll say, you could use a little rain. You could use a little rain, and just sort of put it where I feel that it would be interesting to have.
So it's kind of a spot emitter that adds to the global weather system when there's rain. It kind of spices it up positionally in a way that the bed of rain doesn't have that kind of directionality.
I want you to be able, the maps are small.
Yeah.
So I want you to be able to move through a space and be like, I was here and now I'm here.
Yeah.
Just on a subconscious level.
Yeah, so this idea of painting the ambiences on, and not there is a system in there, but you also have this hand done piece of it where you're like, okay, system's doing good, but I need just a little more over here. I need to tuck something kind of fancy in the corner here for when folks wander that way.
Absolutely. You're kind of like creating, I love doing ambient mock-up or markup in a game because it's sort of like doing the sound part of a ride.
Yeah.
You just like a Disney like a boat ride. You're like, okay, here are the pirates here, and here's the waterfall, and here's the fight. It just helps create the world.
Yep.
I definitely later on in the game, let me find a sound that. So one of my ideas, this is a more systemic version of that, because I have these blueprints we created that are like an object of, like, in this case, it'll be a windmill. I love this windmill sound. This windmill sound slaps. This is whenever you get near a windmill. And I also created a bunch of these that I would call more abstracted. It's like half music, half tone.
Okay, I want to hear that windmill, though.
Here's this windmill.
There's a little bass guitar in there.
Yeah, that's right. It's a backwards bass.
Okay.
Yeah.
It does slap. I'm waiting for the trap remix. The windmill trap remix coming.
Yeah. So I did a bunch of objects like that.
Yeah.
I attached those to the actual entity itself.
Got it.
And so those get populated automatically, but those are done on, basically I enter a trigger, starts the thing. Because you have the torch problem, right? You're like, okay, every time a torch exists, we start a torch, and then you're like, why am I using 4,000 voices and everything's virtual voice?
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I wanted to avoid that issue.
Yeah.
Well, Barut, shout out Barut, wanted me to avoid that issue.
Yeah, we have some new techniques in the bag there that someday you'll have to investigate. We call them multi-positioned emitters.
Yes.
So
I'm hip to it.
Pro tip out there, if you're coming across the torch scenario, multi-positioned emitter might be a good solution to dig into in the documentation. We got a shout out from Chillmain in the chat. The best windmill sound they've ever heard.
Word, thank you.
Yeah, remix coming soon.
Chili Main.
Yeah.
Shout out Chili Main.
Dig. Cool. And so just give me this one in reality, like tornado fire physics. Yeah. What happened?
Okay. Oh, God. So that's actually really hard to manage, because you have the physics objects, you have the fact that they're on fire, and the fire was one of the hardest things in this game. And to be honest, I don't think I fully solved it.
Yeah.
I hope to get another pass at the fire in an update. I did a long time ago, I worked on Age of Empires Online. And Age of Empires Online had a concept of, if you had 3 foot soldiers, that they're triggering their individual footsteps.
Yep.
If you have 5 or more, it's medium group, 10 or more, large group.
Yep.
So I want to handle the fire in a similar way. I wasn't able to this time.
Yeah.
So when a tornado happens, the tornado is positional to the entity itself, and it starts and it goes throughout its process. Yep. But what can happen is that it starts picking up physics objects. It can also cause damage to entities around it. So you're playing damage sounds, you're playing physics sounds, you're playing the tornado, you're playing the music, you're playing the ambience, you're playing the weather, because it only happens when it's windy.
Oh yeah.
And then you're playing the fact that everything's on fire. So I did the thing that any good boy would do, or girl, or anyone. I put some hard limits on physics sounds.
Yep.
And I put some hard limits on how many fire sounds I could have, because fire was quite an issue.
Oh yeah. And you didn't have that sweet Age of Empires scaling system.
I did not.
Gotcha.
No.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's, again, some of the things you have to leave on the table at the end of development and prioritize, right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
But that sounds like a worst case scenario.
It is, and I got to say this. Look, like a fire tornado during what's supposed to be a cutscene, not ideal.
Right.
But you know, it's not the worst thing I've heard. So
Fair.
I wouldn't say like grab that element of the game and be like, here's my latest demo, please hire me.
Right.
But I'm like, yeah, that happened, you know?
Yep. In a worst case scenario, if you can at least convey the tremendous, you know, what do we call it? Natural event, right? Simulated natural event. Like, what's that sound like in real life? I don't know many people that are like in heavy rain, tornado with everything on fire. Like, we just don't have a lot of basis in reality to really even compare it to, do we?
No.
I've never experienced that.
I've been in a tornado.
Okay.
And I've been around a fire.
Okay.
But never at the same time.
Yeah. So
never when 35 poison barrels and zombies and a wraith was running around.
Yeah.
You know?
So I mean, we're just going to have to imagine that it sounds actually perfect the way that you designed it, because, well, and this is part of the simulation genre in general, right? And I remember Gary's mod for Half-Life 2 and like spawning like 1 million barrels and like blowing them up, you know, and it's like, okay, like I can't ever do that. That's an experience I will never have in real life. It didn't sound perfect, but boy, was that fun.
Super fun.
Yeah.
I don't even know if they had clever voice limiting back then.
Yeah, they had some in the source engine.
Yeah.
But no, not when I say clever, I mean, it was buried in code somewhere to access.
Gotcha.
For sure.
Yeah. I see.
But this is part of the beauty of simulation games, is that it gives us this opportunity to experience these things that we would never want to actually do in real life. Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
So thanks for walking us through that wild one. How about, I heard that there's a crazy fly-through video.
Oh, yes.
What do you think about, set that up for me and I'll spin it here for folks. What are we going to watch?
So this is GoPro Extreme Sports style. I was going to show a few pieces of gear I used for both the sound design and music for the game.
Great.
That were kind of integral to the whole deal. And so I'm going to watch this with you, and because I didn't talk over it.
Perfect. Let me get that queued up here. And rolling.
Okay, so we got the analog rhythm, the Electron Digitone, Electron Octatrack, the twister, but that's an
MIDI fighter.
MIDI fighter, yes. Got a couple of those MIDI fighters. I wanted to go back to the Digitone. This group here, my Moog Mother and the DFAM. Argon 8, oddly useful. Minilog, incredibly useful. This was for some of the more like Patty kind of things, the old classic Juno, guitar and bass, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
That pedal right there on the right is a Coma Electronics. It's not made anymore, but it's a very weird bit bucket kind of digital delay, and it sounds so mean.
Nice.
And I think the one piece right here, the Lyra, was, and also that Minotaur, man, that's a badass piece. That Lyra is the sound of the Weird West.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, in a unique box, like you were saying, a meditation box of sorts.
Yes, I want their drum machine.
Okay. Well, sponsorship opportunity, maybe.
Yeah. Drum machine, please.
Nice. Well, Matt, it's great to unpack your process here around this game. It is just an aesthetic accomplishment. So many vibes from like the El Topo Jodorowsky, psychedelic Western legacy. It's got all the cool parts, and the sound and music that you brought to it. You can tell, this was a passion project for you and for the team. Again, like to have the lead developer's rock band as part of this, right? This is a project that has run through the blood of everyone who is working on it, I imagine, and the result really speaks for itself. So hopefully folks will get out there and dig into Weird West now that it's out. Congrats.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. Great to be here. Great to chat.
Yeah.
Always a pleasure. Oh, real quick, can I shout
You
out?
should. Bring it.
Okay, just in case I forgot, got to shout out Tyler Cornett over at Insomniac. He actually did the human combat music before moving to LA. Got to shout out DJ Brett Johnson. He helped out with some sound design. Got to shout out Eric Haven. He helped out a lot and just some implementation stuff. And he did the Siren theme song.
Nice.
Got to shout out Ethan Burdorf, DJ Roya, who helped me edit some dialogue for this project. Ubisoft Squad, my baby mamas, my children.
Yeah.
Amelia and Jack. And my girlfriend, Kate Lee.
Beautiful.
And my brother, I think I shouted out my brother, Tyler.
Tyler
Pearsall
got a
earlier,
shout out.
but-
What's up,
Okay,
Tyler?
good. I just got to double check. You know,
Yeah.
we're homies. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I miss his party at GDC.
you know, he misses his. Part.
Yeah, yeah, I guess. Got a bunch of Ubisoft audio folks in the chat propping you up.
Hey guys. That's sweet.
Great to have you here. Thanks for tuning in to Wise Up on Air today with Matt Piersall and Weird West. It's been great.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Thanks, and we'll see you again soon, maybe even sooner than you think. So keep them peeled. Smash that like button, subscribe, what all the kids say. Great to be here. Thanks again, Matt.
Bye. Thank you.